The Yukon, in the northwestern corner of Canada, just east of Alaska, is sparsely populated, naturally beautiful, and wild. A land of mountain ranges, plateaus, and river valleys. Historically, it is often remembered for the Klondike Gold Rush and remains to this day one of the world's premier mining jurisdictions. Exploration companies like White Gold Corp and Klondike Gold Corp are an integral part of the industry that is the largest private contributor to the Yukon economy. In mid-August 1896, gold nuggets were discovered on Bonanza Creek, a tributary of the Klondike River, by George Carmack, his wife Kate, Skookum Jim Mason, and Dawson Charlie, marking the beginning of the Klondike Gold Rush. While the Bonanza Creek discovery is considered the first major finding to kick off the Klondike Gold Rush, fortunes would also be made at nearby El Dorado Creek. One such claim is part of the Klondike Gold Corporation's land package. Peter Tallman is the president and CEO of Klondike Gold Corp, and one of the Yukon's most respected geologists, with over 35 years of experience in the mining industry.
I've been told that I'm a storyteller, so I do present the Klondike by taking people around on what I call the Gilligan's Island 3-hour tour and showing them unique places that no one really gets to see. They're very cool, out of the way, and not on the beaten track.
He also enjoyed a minor part in seasons 5 and 6 of the Discovery Channel's Gold Rush as the self-proclaimed evil claim lord of the McKinnon Creek placer mine.
We're here at the site of the discovery of gold on El Dorado Creek, arguably more significant in some ways than the discovery on Bonanza Creek. It was made by a fellow by the name of Anton Stander and 4 prospecting partners, and it occurred 14 days after the original Bonanza Creek discovery. And El Dorado Creek is richer and has produced a little over 4 million ounces. They walked up Bonanza Creek and went all the way to the headwaters, and it had all been staked within 2 weeks of discovery. And they came back and spent the night here on what was an unregarded and unnamed creek at the time. And Anton refused to leave and said, "I'm going to dig a hole and keep digging here. I'm not leaving until I find gold." And the following days he did. And these became some of the richest placer claims in the Klondike. The 5 of them mined all winter long, and his 4 prospecting partners were amongst the group that left in the midsummer 1897 and were amongst the people that landed 2 tons of gold in Portland and Seattle in the States. And that's the news that kicked off the discovery and all the rush, the gold rush that is known as the Klondike Gold Rush. I often poke around in these rocks because there's an immense amount of gold have gone through this particular site over the years. And I'm always just trying to poke in there and see if you left any nuggets in the fireplace. So far, I haven't found any. But I always say every day when I pass by, I always ask Anton to wish me luck. And I hope perhaps his original luck helps me find gold here too.
Official word of the Klondike gold discovery didn't get out until 1897, but when it did, many prospectors began the journey to the Klondike. The Chilkoot Trail from Dyea, Alaska to Bennett, British Columbia, also known as the Golden Staircase, was one of the routes stampeders converged upon. Authorities required travelers entering Canada have enough provisions to last a year. Too steep and icy for pack animals, men were forced to climb the frozen slope 20 to 30 times to haul their necessary supplies. Those lucky enough to survive the trek over the mountain passes would then need to traverse a series of lakes amongst the largest freshwater bodies of water, hundreds of feet deep, before navigating hundreds of miles of the Yukon River in small boats ill-equipped to make the arduous journey. While an estimated 100,000 prospectors began the journey to the Klondike, only around 30,000 of them arrived after enduring bitter cold, disease, and malnutrition, or succumbing to the Yukon River. To handle the influx of prospectors that did make it, the city of Dawson was established at the confluence of the Klondike and Yukon rivers, close to the mining activities nearby. It was named after the Canadian government geologist who helped survey the boundary between Alaska and the Northwest Territories, Dr. George Mercer Dawson. With the gold concentrated in small areas, it was possible for some prospectors to acquire quantities worth more than a year's wages in only a matter of minutes. At $3 an ounce, this was a good pan. Chief Technical Advisor of White Gold Corp., Sean Ryan, is the legendary prospector named the King of a New Yukon Gold Rush. In a 2011 New York Times article, and recipient of multiple Prospector of the Year awards.
The big gold rush that happened in 1898, they all came up looking for placer gold. And placer gold is gold found in these creeks such as this. And the gold is liberated from the hard rock sources in the hills. And as it comes down the hills, it ends up in the creeks and then at the bottom of the creeks. So if I take a gold pan or a big sluice plant and you wash those gravels, gold is the heaviest thing. It drops to the bottom, and that's how they get their gold from a placer point of view. So it's easy to get the gold out. You just take a pan and the nuggets, if you're lucky, fall out of the fall out of your pan or fall into your pan.
Founded by Thomas Edison in 1889, the Edison Manufacturing Company released a short film in May 1901 depicting another method of searching for gold in the Yukon when water is scarce, using the same water over and over again in rockers until it eventually becomes too thick with sediment.
They were looking for rocks. We had hundreds of thousands of people here, and nobody came up with the goods. So I'm not rocket science, I took another science, which was soils instead of rocks. As a prospector, we run around here in the Yukon. Most people were using rock hammers, banging on rocks, looking for gold in the rocks. But in this part of the world, we're not glaciated, means the glaciers never got here. So there's less than 2% outcrop exposure. So if I'm going to run around like a traditional prospector with a rock hammer banging rocks, you can't really find nothing. Like your probability is nil next to none. So we had to come up with a different solution, and ended up that we tried deeper soils. And the difference that I did was, instead of taking the top 6 inches, we actually went down 2 to 3 feet minimum. And then that basically gave us, once we started testing those soils, that's actually what actually showed where the gold was and the response. And so that's what we ended up doing but not just hundreds, we've taken over 400,000 soils in this district. And that actually tells me where the mineralized systems are. It doesn't show me exactly where the gold is, but I know which ridges to work off of.
Dawson City quickly grew and prospered, becoming the largest city north of Seattle and west of Winnipeg. A 21-year-old Jack London was one of the hopeful fortune seekers to arrive in the Yukon in late 1897. While he did not make his fortune in gold, he did find the inspiration for short stories and novels such as The Call of the Wild and White Fang. His cabin was built at the North Fork of Henderson Creek on what is now White Gold Corp property, his name scrawled on one of the logs in the interior. The cabin has since been disassembled, with replicas built as museum sites in Dawson City and London's hometown of Oakland, California. A steam plant provided electricity in Dawson by late 1898, long before many other major cities in North America. Local businesses such as saloons, stores, and restaurants were booming. The effect of the sudden population growth was also evident on the area's First Nations people, as they found themselves overrun by gold miners. In this photo, local First Nations chief Jim Boss, seated on the left, and one of the first discoverers on Bonanza Creek, Skookum Jim Mason, standing behind him, can be seen in their modern suits, with who is thought to be the Dawson City mayor at the time on the left, and the head of the clergy on the right.
White gold is prospecting, or their primary land package is in the traditional territory of the Tronjek Gwich'in. And it's kind of fun to have them as the traditional First Nations in this area because they're used to mining, and so they're quite, we could actually talk to them and work with them quite nicely.
It is speculated that $29 million in gold was recovered from the area between 1897 and 1899. But by 1906, it became clear that the most easily worked placer mines were no longer profitable, especially in such daunting conditions. Dawson's population quickly declined as prospectors were lured elsewhere by word of a fresh new gold discovery in Nome, Alaska. The large companies that remained began to employ more mechanized means of gold recovery from the region.
This is a place that links the original past 1896 gold rush to today. The Lone Star mine building behind me is right in the middle of our Lone Star zone. The old timers found gold here turn of the century, 1900 or so, and excavated a series of adits into the side of the hill and mined a limited amount of gold at the time. Searching around in the garbage dump left over from that period, the midden, there's this boot, and this boot has fascinated me ever since I found it. And what it shows is the conditions of the day were probably terrible, and the conditions that miners went through, and these are underground miners. So this boot in particular is a leather boot, and it has two soles on it now. The original sole, which was nailed on, metal nails, and then obviously had a leak, and another layer of leather was nailed on top of it. If you can imagine standing on ice, permafrost here, with metal holding your boot together, it would freeze your feet and ankles really quickly. And underground in this adit that they, or the tunnel that they made, they'd be wearing wool sweaters like the one I'm wearing, and it would have been wet all the time, and that's permafrost melting, so it's near zero temperature. Frozen feet, frozen body, they'd come back to the mine building, read a newspaper, and because it's so cold, particularly in the winter, they're gluing the newspaper onto the boards for a little bit of insulation. It's just a testament to what they went through to try to extract gold from the ground around here. Part of the process was they brought to the Yukon a stamp mill and some, at that time, advanced underground mining equipment. And a stamp mill was used by the old-timer miners to take rocks, crush them into gravel and dust, and be able to extract the gold from them. The special thing about this is it's a Hendy stamp mill. Joshua Hendy in 1840 founded a company that supplied tools to the California gold rush miners at the time, and the Hendy company became a worldwide mining supplier of the best kind of equipment. And so it was really special if you had a Hendy stamp mill. And those are California furs, and all the material was made basically and smelted and assembled in San Francisco, shipped up to Skagway, brought across the Chilkoot Pass via the White Pass Railway, which is an N-gauge railway that had been constructed to supply the Klondike, arrived in Whitehorse, was transferred onto paddle wheelers, taken down the Yukon River, docked to Dawson, taken apart, dragged by horses up into the woods here, and reassembled where you see it today. Ultimately, they were briefly successful, but gold prices collapsed in 1912 going into World War II, and this place went broke, and no one's really been back until we're here now. Here we are 125 years later, back more or less in the same area, proving that they were right, but there's vastly more gold here than they ever suspected. And what we're doing today is providing a modern take to it, and we're doing mineral delineation of a gold deposit right now that is going to replace that building with a 125-year update of new technology, new methods, and hopefully a mineral deposit that lasts many years into the future. We are here to make history again.
Dredges, or floating excavators, were used for large-scale placer mining. Dredge number 4 was built in 1912 and operated until 1959. It is now a National Historic Site on Bonanza Creek.
You can see that this is the dredge bucket line. And you can see you got many buckets coming down. And what this would do is scoop up a little bit of dirt and bring it up into its processing, which was a big trommel system that separates the coarse rock, and then the fines actually fall through this trommel system, and it falls into a sluice box, and then that sluice box has mats, and it catches the gold as it comes down, and then the fine fines that have no gold fall off the back end. This is the coarse that falls off the top end, but all the gold gets trapped in this section. And so then they clean the mats, usually maybe every 4 or 5 days, depending on how much gold they expect to come out of that system. This dredge would pick up roughly 23 kilograms every 3 or 4 days. And the value of that in today's dollar is about $1.5 million American. So they were making some good money back then on these systems. But when you look at the size of this dredge, it must have took them a lot to get this thing up here. So now what we're doing with White Gold, we're actually looking for the source. And this is where one of our land packages, we own over 5 miles of ground here. And we do believe it has to be somewhere up in the hills above this dredge.
We're using technology now to go help find the hard rock source for what caused all this placer gold here.
Isaac Fage is the president and co-founder of Ground Truth Exploration, inventor of the drones to drills exploration method.
We call the Ground Truth method drones to drills, and we provide a full set of exploration tools that help us in grassroots exploration. White Gold Corp is using this model to help drive their exploration success here in the Yukon and in the White Gold District. It's a methodical exploration approach where we start with high-res base mapping using drones for things like imagery and topography, LiDAR collection. Really, Ground Truth, we started as masters of large-scale soil sampling programs, and in this district here, soil sampling has proven to be one of the top tools to help find near-surface mineral potential.
Technology's basically worked with us in exploration over the last 10 to 15 years, and that's kind of my job, is to kind of look out and see where there's new ideas that may not be in our industry, and then how can we bring them back and apply them to this bushwork. And we basically drone the country before we start working. And with that, I could use that data to show people how the slope and what the topography looks like on the ground. 95% of the time, there's nothing really there. Like, there's anomaly, but it's not economical. So the idea is, can we kiss these frogs without damaging too much the environment? And then if it's there, well, then we hone in on it. But if it's not, we can move on. So our basically spin around on data collection it's a package deal. And that's what it's all about.
This is the area that me and Kathy started prospecting in '96 with our old freighter canoe.
Sean and his wife Kathy originally came to the Yukon hunting a different kind of treasure.
I started the business when I was 18, when I came out of high school. And I was living in Timmins. My dad worked for the mine, Kidd Creek Mines. So he got me actually a job on the exploration team. So instead of going to university, because I had a passion for the bush and I was a trapper at the time. So we ended up dovetailing into going into the exploration world and starting our career at 18. We ended up trying this thing called wild mushroom picking, and we fell in love with that. And you had to use your skills as a same thing like a trapper, because you were hunting a type of mushroom that was like living in the wild that hardly anybody could find. So we were hunting for mushrooms for about 7-8 years here, and then once my lovely wife got pregnant with our first child, we decided that we weren't going to go wandering the hills looking for mushrooms anymore. So we decided to put our thinking cap on and tried the actual life of looking for the placer gold, where the source of the placer gold came from.
While mapping the Yukon River for the Geological Survey of Canada in 1887, William Ogilvie heard a rumor of a high-grade quartz vein found high above the mouth of the White River.
And lo and behold, we actually found it in 2003 or 4. And it was a high-grade vein, and it was probably the one William Ogilvie was talking about.
By 2002, we actually staked the White deposit. That wasn't a deposit yet, but was a discovery. Here we're looking at, there's a log in what we call the discovery hole that we had drilled basically back in 2008 with Underworld. So this was hole number 4 that we drilled 18 meters of 4 grams. So what we're standing on is pretty well ground zero of basically the White Gold District discovery. You know, and then we made the coffee after that. But the idea is that this one was the catalyst that took off, and now we're standing on about 1.5 million ounces. So you never know what you find when you dig a little bit. So.
Between 1896 and 1898, the population of Dawson City rose to 40,000, then quickly dropped to less than 5,000 by 1902. But the spotlight would shine on Dawson again in 1905, as a group of miners turned hockey players became participants in one of the most famous Stanley Cup challenges to date against the reigning champion, the Ottawa Silver Seven. The Dawson City Nuggets were managed and sponsored by Klondike Joe Boyle, an entrepreneur who had made his fortune in mining. They traveled more than 4,000 miles to Ottawa by dog sled, bicycle, ship, and train, setting out in weather 20 degrees below zero. After a month of exhausting travel, they arrived only 2 days before the first scheduled match, losing 9-2. While it was hoped the 2-day respite would be enough to allow them to rally, they were again defeated by an even greater margin, 23-2. All was not lost, however, as the Nuggets played 23 exhibition matches while making their way home to Dawson, earning a respectable 13-9 record with 1 tie. The Dawson City of today retains much of the feel of the Gold Rush days, with its frontier-style buildings like Diamond Tooth Gertie's and the Triple Hotel. The cabin of Robert Service, a beloved poet known as the Bard of the Yukon, remains there to this day. Dawson is a city with unpaved streets and raised wooden sidewalks.
In 2011, I gave a talk after the Underworld discovery that we made on the White, and I was in Toronto. And when I gave the talk and discussed about me being a prospector, there was a question that popped out at the end of the talk. And someone asked me, are you telling me that if we come to the Yukon, stake a claim, and do the work that you're kind of doing right now with soil sampling, that we would be the first in history to do this? And my answer was yes. And at that point, you could have heard a pin drop. You could see people's minds going, thinking. And within a week, I heard even the Yukon Tourist Bureau were getting calls of how can they rent canoes to go down the Yukon River. The new gold rush was a combination of a few things. One, gold prices was moving up, but the other one was we've never made a discovery south of Dawson where the fabled source of the Klondike gold, 20 million ounces of placer, no known source ever seen, and the White discovery ended up being the first actual hard rock discovery that was south of Dawson, that was in kind of the gold fields. It was his own gold fields. It was the Thistle, Kirkman Creek area. So that got people going when I made that discovery, because it was over 1 million ounces. And then it got people thinking. But it was when we actually made the Coffee discovery, which I should have never been. Statistically, you only find one in your life. Meanwhile, I found another one, which I thought was his big brother, 15 miles away. So once that news got out, that's what actually started driving people crazy. And it was people realizing that, like, I'm a poor prospector and I'm just running around staking claims, but doing the work right, that I was actually making discoveries, and they all realized they could do the same thing. So that's what launched hundreds of juniors. Well, we had over 100 juniors show up here and try to stake as much as they could. And that led to, it's kind of like a big food fight where everybody's running out, just staking like mad till the dust settled down. Then they got to work it eventually. And in the whole Yukon, there was over 200,000 claims staked in those 2-year window period. So, and that was like, we've never seen a rush like that since the turn of the century. From this point of view, we've got 6 million ounces of placer gold, and it had to come from somewhere. So everybody thought it eroded and it was a flat line thing, and the land uplifted, and there was about a 1,000-foot uplift or 800 feet. And people thought all the gold was in that in that section of rock. So when it uplifted and eroded, it dropped all this placer into here. But, you know, there should be hard rock sources to go with that. So that's why these claims were never staked, because everybody thought they were all gone. Like, they believed the rumor.
In the mining industry, there are a handful of large companies, known as majors, that are actually running active mines.
So the majors is the ultimate source of who you want to sell your claims to. So right now, as a prospector, I work as a prospector privately, and then I option my claims to a junior. They're like a stepping stone to the major. So a junior will spend a bunch of money, and if it looks like it's a bona fide deposit, then a major will come in and buy it.
Thousands of smaller companies, known as juniors, are the ones completing the exploration and discovery phases, searching for the mineral deposits worthy of further development. Investment in junior mining company stocks help to provide the necessary funding for these exploration efforts, essentially allowing the average consumer to join in the hunt for hidden treasures. Successful results can reflect on the stock price and provide profit for the company and its investors. Junior mining stocks are, however, often considered high risk, so thorough due diligence should be one of the first steps in the investment process. Websites and applications have been developed to provide consumers with an all-inclusive experience, including detailed stock price histories, financial details, news releases, and interviews with company management.
To start with an exploration program, you actually have to start almost years in advance before it's an advanced program. And the idea is, like I say, what we run is these soils. And I keep going back to soils because soils was our bread and butter. The soils is the way we understand the land first. And then once I actually understand something, then we could actually start building an exploration program around the target that we're starting to figure out.
We're using real-time data collection. So when we use our light drill rigs, we're actually using a tool called XRF to give us live geochemistry, and we understand if we're hitting mineralization as we drill. We also use tools such as a downhole televiewer, where we can actually image the sidewall of the drill hole and come up with a digital drill core, where that's collected in the field, and we can email that, to management and people, say in Toronto, the same night that drilling's happening out in a bush camp, here in the White Gold District. And so smart decisions can be made on the fly using real-time data, and that's been a big driver for change when you use intelligent technologies.
We got to hone that part to drill, because drilling is the most expensive, and you could be 5 meters away from the deposit and drill the wrong direction. But the idea is that programs are only designed once you kind of make a discovery or you have a good idea. And then it costs you money to do these programs. So the idea is you got to budget these things and how many samples you're going to take. Because it's always a risk. So there's this risk that you don't want to put too much money in the ground, but you don't want to put too little so that you could actually find these things.
Yeah, what you really do is you hope to find some visible gold when you're looking in these loops, but visible gold's like a hole in one. You don't see it too often.
Sean Ryan is an excellent prospector, and he's used soil sampling as his primary evaluation tool for all the Yukon. And it is an excellent, effective tool because Yukon hasn't been glaciated, so it's weathered in place. And that means if you find gold in a soil sample, there's gold directly beneath that in the bedrock. And that works nearly everywhere. It doesn't work in the Klondike. The Klondike wasn't glaciated, but there was a big lake here. And because of that lake, we have a layer of old mud, and that's moved around on the bottom. And so our gold we see in soils is more widely distributed. In the Klondike, we've realized that the gold deposits here, they're called orogenic gold deposits. That model wasn't invented until the 80s. And it's only really been applied around the world globally in the last 10, 20 years. So it's brand new science. There's new ways of looking at the rocks. We're using that and producing innovative new maps and the geology and putting structure together to locate gold deposits. It's an exciting time because we are on the forefront of science, trying to use those tools to delineate mineral deposits.
We've been able to take a set of information that has been gathered over 120 years of previous exploration in this area, and been able to start bringing a pattern out of the chaos to make it an understandable group of rocks and an understandable type of mineralization that we can use as a predictive tool for where we might find more mineralization.
Right behind me, we're looking at a mountain of white, that's white channel gravel, gold-bearing gravels washed down Bonanza Creek from wherever their source was. And 20 million ounces of gold have come from those gravels from 1896 until the present. Until now, there's been no known source. Lone Star Zone is the principal zone of gold mineralization for Klondike gold today. Originally, some gold was discovered here just after the turn of the century, 1902, 1903. And that came following the 1896 discovery of gold in Bonanza Creek, which is just downhill from here. What we've learned recently is that the Lone Star Zone is the source of the Bonanza Creek placer gold. So in Bonanza Creek, there's been 3 million ounces of gold come from the creek over the last 125 years, and we're standing on the source of it.
Gold, silver, lead, and zinc continue to be the most economic non-renewable resources in the Yukon.
The Yukon compares favorably to any jurisdiction around the world. From a ranking perspective, it's in the top 10 in the world for governance and safety. From a geologic perspective, I rank it also in the top 10 world-class gold mining districts. The potential here has been ignored, but it's off the scale. There is an enormous potential for gold. I think that potential will be realized hopefully soon, and I think it will last a long, long time.
Traditionally, like out east or down south, you could actually explore 12 months of the year. The Yukon was confined to specifically 100 days, the work in summer months. But now with some of this new actual rotary or RAB technology that we were showing you, the RAB drills, we could actually now drill from pretty well from February all the way to November. The only thing that really hampers us here in remote areas is accessed by helicopter. It's the daylight. It's actually, that's what's slowing us down. But if you could get a road to it now, you could actually start drilling. And now we're using water trucks to bring the water to the diamond drills, and they could actually drill all winter long on some of these projects.
Historically, the Yukon has been relatively inaccessible, and the iconic story of people climbing over the Chilkoot Mountains to get here is the photograph that everyone knows. Today, though, there's a highway behind me, and power, and flights in regular scheduled air service, and driving. It's easy to get here. And so exploration for us in Dawson is some of the cheapest costs in Canada. Forget about it in the north. So this is just a great place to come and invest for mineral exploration and to make discoveries.
During the last 3 years, the Yukon and the feds, Yukon government and the federal government have contributed a large amount of money, over $300 million, into this resource gateway road building. And it's really designed to build access roads into different parts because we're so remote. And they're starting on that project. And what that's going to do from this Dawson district or White Gold district, it's going to allow us to actually, those roads will be here and let us work for the next 20 to 30 years. And that tells me that once we get one mine going, then we have these haul roads that will be able to, even if I find a small deposit, I'll be able to haul basically the truckloads of gold to the mills. And this is how they work in other parts of the Canada. So this road system is very, very important for the long term of this industry, but also for the future of the jobs in the Yukon.
Barges are still heavily relied upon to bring supplies, fuel, and equipment to many of the placer miner camps along the Yukon River.
I actually don't see my drill on there.
Camp life is actually kind of unique. You're a bunch of people, men and women, all living in a remote area, and so you become like one big family. You get to know each other on hard days, wet days. 20 years ago, everybody was playing backgammon and crib, and now everybody's got modern computers. It used to be everybody would gather every night around the table, even doing your exploration. Now everybody's on their own little computers. We actually have satellite dishes with internet, so everybody get their emails from the middle of nowhere now. So you could see that there's many little aspects, many little jobs that all form this exploration camp, and all with the idea of hunting for treasure.
Okay, here's a box of core from our Golden Saddle deposit. It's a lot of quartz veins, as you can see here, a lot of brecciation, a little bit of pyrite, probably about 1%, but you know, some good gold numbers, good gold values, really good gold recoveries from the metallurgical test work, about 92, 93%. So sample here's got some, you probably might find it difficult to see from the camera, but there's some visible gold right here in this piece associated with this quartz vein.
The reason why I hunt for gold in the Yukon is based on, I come from the Timmins camp, where there's lots of people kind of staking and prospecting. When I came here, there was hardly anybody, like there was only maybe a dozen prospectors truly looking. So I have more land to look at here, and I've got a little bit more freedom. And so but there's more wilderness, and that's really what I like about the Yukon. It's still a wild place.
Look around you, it's fantastic. I get to visit corners of the earth that most people never will see, off the beaten track, and find and make mineral discoveries. It's so exciting, and it's an intellectual challenge and a puzzle and all of that. It is just a great job, and personally, it's my dream job.
As we prospect, running through, we actually find different things, such as like in the Placer Creek, sometimes we're actually finding Macedon bones from when they were around here. We're also finding old picks and shovels and kind of things from remnants from the 1898 rush. In one creek, the last 2 years, we've now found the shovels were actually, because the old timers put them on the tree that were their height, they're now actually up 10 feet up the tree. So we found now 2 batches of shovels from the 1898, and we still can't believe that they actually walked into these places like 30, 40 miles in the middle of nowhere, and we fly in with a helicopter. So it's kind of fun when we find these old discoveries. You know someone else has been here. We rescued a guy that was by Casino. He was on Rude Creek, a placer miner. He was there for 38 days. He flew in and wanted to get out after the first week. And so we flew out there and we went to his cut, no. We flew up to his cabin, no, it's boarded. Then we flew up to the airstrip. He's standing on the airstrip. So we landed. I said, what's going on? Like, everybody's waiting for you to call. And I'm just checking in. He said, oh, no, I wanted to get out for the last month. I said, what the hell you been eating for the last month? He pulls out a jar of peanut butter. My last jar of peanut butter left. Oh my God. So I said, give me your sat phone. Well, yeah, there's the thing. Call this number. See, it doesn't work. I said, you gotta hit send. He didn't hit the green thing. And you know what he was doing? He stood out there for 30 days with a mirror on the runway for 30 days trying to flash someone going by. Like, I couldn't believe it. I said, oh my God.
While the Yukon remains a wild and largely underexplored region, improved transportation and infrastructure, along with evolving exploration technology, continue to fuel the modern resource mining industry.
Research and development that we've put in for, coming up with more efficient drilling and exploration technologies, we've actually really reduced what is the environmental impact, and that is a really important part for social responsibility and overall society, having a positive impression on exploration and allowing us to go without making ground disturbance or any reclamation needs. And that's a really important part if we're going to go out and methodically explore big land packages, that we need to leave them intact in the exploration stage.
The next big area for discovery, I think truly, is here in the Klondike. The area has never been mapped until now. That's as shocking as that seems. It's been around and known for 125 years, 20 million ounces of gold to come from here, and there was never a geology map until now. And we've done some unique things in terms of exploring and using all the new information that's available to us to make discoveries. One of the unique things about the Klondike is that all the gold here is visible. Coarse gold you can see with the naked eye. That's unusual in the world, and that helps us figure out where there's lots of it. And so asking me where the next big area is going to come from, I'm biased, but I think it's here.
Until the next great discovery, the hunt for hidden treasure continues for White Gold Corp and Klondike Gold Corp.
What's next for Peter Tallman is really the now. I'm focused on delivering a gold mine in the Klondike.
What I'm up to now is we're still doing hunting and hard rock exploration with white gold, but I've dovetailed and I've kind of moved into also looking for placer. There's not that many actual exploration guys, prospectors looking for placer because it's a difficult game. And that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years, is kind of trying to figure out how I could apply new technology in the hunt for placer.
The Yukon is one of the many prolific mining jurisdictions around the world, with rich histories and stories of their own. Stay tuned as we travel and explore them one by one.